Up next, we have the session on current perspective in neovascular glaucoma. So I'll be inviting the first speaker, Dr. Prafulla Sharma, but I cannot actually see her here. So let's move ahead with Dr. Abhijit Chattopadhyay ji. Sir, are you here? Dr. Abhijit?
Yes.
Could you please share your screen and start your
definitely. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, share is not visible.
Oh, yes. Now?
No, sir.
No,
Yeah.
not.
Now
it's
it's coming.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Yeah. So my topic is strategies aimed at regressing neovascularization in neovascular glaucoma. First, many thanks to All India Ophthalmology Society Scientific Committee and also Dr. Sumit Chaudhary and Dr. Chandana Pal for giving me the opportunity. So there is one review article we just came through in the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology March 2021 edition, from which I borrowed heavily. And introduction. So neovascular glaucoma is a severe form of secondary glaucoma characterized by proliferation of fibrovascular tissue in anterior chamber angle and devastatingly high intraocular pressure, often refractory to all treatments, results in painful blind eye. Final pathway is release of angiogenic factors, giving rise to new vessels in anterior segment. So mechanisms and predisposing conditions. The retinal ischemia, number 2 is retinal detachment, then ocular inflammation, intraocular tumors, and systemic diseases like SLE and some others, rheumatoid. So retinal ischemia, mainly 33% of the all neovascular glaucoma cases comes from PDR, another 33% from CRVO, and about 13% from ocular ischemic syndrome. Then there are CRAO, retinopathy of prematurity, FEVR, PHPV, etc. Retinal detachment like chronic tractional retinal detachment, proliferative vitreoretinopathy, coarse retinoschisis. Then ocular inflammation includes chronic uveitis, vasculitis, trauma, endophthalmitis. Intraocular tumors include choroidal and iris melanoma, retinoblastoma, etc. So there is excellent pathogenesis chart given in that journal. I am not going to detail. I just summarized in my next slide the nuances of that. Main common denominator is capillary non-perfusion, which results in retinal or choroidal ischemia, or in fact both may be ischemic due to the different pathogenesis. And then there are some chemicals secreted mainly from the posterior segment, which comes into anterior segment also. So the main component is vascular endothelial growth factor. Then there is TGF, IL-6, and AGF others. So that creates iris new vessels, then also anterior chamber angle new vessels, and which results in high intraocular pressure, that is neovascular glaucoma, and which results in painful blind eye. The most common entities we have given like ischemic CRVO, up to 60% of ischemic CRVOs can land in NVG, and up to 65% of the PDR cases, up to 68% of the ocular ischemic cases can land in NVG. Then of course there are others which I already told. The stages of NVGs, if we see, first is pre-rubiosis, the new vessels not clinically visible. Then it comes to stage 1, that is rubiosis iris. First, the term coined by Coates in 1996, and there is small vessels are at pupillary margin, angle is fair, and IOP is normal, which goes into the stage 2 if we don't intervene. It is glaucoma with open angle, that is vessels coalesce and form neovascular membrane over iris and angle. fine arborized vessels crossing scleral spur, trabecular mesoid obstruction, and dysfunction and high intraocular pressure, which goes into stage 3, that's glaucoma with closed angle, where neovascular membrane contracts and peripheral antisynechia and angle closure with abrupt very high intraocular pressure. So comes to management, there are main few points, like first aim is to decrease intraocular pressure, second is to control inflammation with topical atropine and steroids, then regression of new vessels and treating primary cause, and even after surgery or cyclodestruction, neovascularization leads to crisis. So my topic is this third point, that is the regression of new vessels and treating primary cause. So management protocol of NVG will come to see here. We see the high IOP and the normal IOP. Normal IOP cases managed similarly except for IOP management. Like if it is a media clear, we control the IOP and then treat etiology, and intravitreal anti-VEGF is used in all cases, and also treat inflammation. If media not clear, then we can, the corneal edema is there, or cataract or vitreous hemorrhage. Then for vitreous hemorrhage or TRD, you can go for the vitreoretinal surgery. For cataract extraction with intravitreal anti-VEGF, and corneal edema also anti-VEGF and even antiretinal prophylaxis. So detection of new vessels, how we do it clinically. So undilated slit-lamp examination is a must. Gonioscopy, in fact, sometimes NVA may appear before neovascularization iris. Color photography, including white field photography, fundus fluorescent angiography of retina and iris both, and of course, OCTA is a new armamentarium. So regression of new vessels, PDR, extensive PRP most effective in preventing neovascular glaucoma in high-risk PDR cases. Central retinal vein obstruction by CVO study, we already know. We have to observe greater than 2 clock hours area of NVI or NVA. We do extensive scatter laser, though Professor Hyre differs with the conclusions, but usually we maintain this till now. And for YS, IOP to be decreased to improve blood flow, and it is intern carotid disease, so cardiologist opinions. Our laser photoablation act. Basically, prompt panretinal photoablation results in ischemic retina photoablation and decrease of unhealthy but physiologically active retina, which results in increased oxygen to inner retinal layers through chorioretinal shunts across the scars, and decreased angiogenic factors improved retinal hemodynamics. Here we can see it's a case of high-risk PDR with pre-retinal hemorrhage and vascular vitreous hemorrhage, and it is thoroughly lasered, you can see, except leading 2 disc diameter from the macular area temporally, and all area lasered, and up to this we came up to 500 micron. It's a slit-lamp laser done with 500 micron. So the pan-retinal cryotherapy or anti-retinal cryopexy, where media is not there, you can use it.
She did not talk a single thing. Last में बाके बोलना शुरू हुआ. लोगों को इतनी immunity के बारे में
And there is
slide में बोला क्या? नहीं, I had to tell her कि please summarize.
After anti-retinal cryopexy, there will be more
summarize नहीं, वो last में रखी थी ना उसने.
and can be combined with anti-VEGF injection.
Professors को तो मुझे लगता है कि they should be more trained कि कैसे बोलना.
Antivascular growth factors, anti-VEGF, lecanemab, ranibizumab, aflibercept, converse. New vessel regress, but reappear rapidly inward, IOP giving comfort.
Even attempted.
Anti-VEGF gives a window where we can do proper laser and decreases the high camera for easier surgery. Increases the success rate of incisional surgery. So regression of new vessels, new vascular structure still present after regression of new vessels by anti-VEGF, and before 10 to 14 days before trabecular surgery, anti-VEGF increases the success rate, decreasing the fibrin and decreasing the inflammation also. And incisional surgery protects against recurrence of new vessels. And if IOP well controlled after surgery, new vessels regress in 50% of the cases. So this is the treatment paradigm and take-home message. Stage 1, pre-glaucoma, ocular features NVI, will do anti-VEGF and PRP. Not much requirement of anti-glaucoma medications or surgery. Stage 2, open angle with elevated IOP and NVA, PRP, anti-VEGF, and anti-glaucoma medication plus minus surgery may land. Stage 3, closed angle with elevated IOP and NVA, we need all 4 weapons. This one NVG due to CRVO, which we first injected anti-VEGF, and when the media cleared, we did extensive PRP, you can see here. So take-home message: early diagnosis and multidisciplinary approach, treat ischemia and decrease intraocular pressure and inflammation, combination of anti-VEGF plus PRP or anti-retinal prophylaxis before the angle closure glaucoma happens. And anti-VEGF and PRP can be used before or even after surgery also to treat new vessels. Sometimes anti-VEGF is given during surgery also. Thank you for the patience here.
Thank you, Abhijit, for giving us clear-cut indications and how to treat the patient in the retina perspective. And just can I come, Dr. Prafulla Sharma, are you there?
No, sir. Dr. Prafulla Sharma as well as Dr. Chandrima Paul are
Chandrima
not.
Pal will come in a later, but she's in a different hall now. Okay. For
Sir,
that,
you
I'm.
in that
I can
way.
continue. I can
Yes.
continue. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak on this first virtual AIS conference. I'm privileged. So my topic was the creating the lasting field, because I'm the glaucoma person. So my perspective will be on the glaucoma, and Dr. Abhijit was the retina person. He treated the patient as retina, because in neovascular glaucoma is a teamwork. Types of doctors needed. One is in retina, one is the glaucoma. Coming to the neovascular glaucoma, it's a blinding disease. As an intractable disease, sometimes it's difficult to manage most of the time, results in disastrous visual loss, and the goal of treatment is to avoid or reduce the visual loss. So prevention is better than cure. So you have to prevent the patient, have a high index of suspicion of his development, and you have to be aware of ocular disease that can cause neovascular glaucoma. And if it occurs, early diagnosis and rational management is essential to minimize visual field loss. What's the pearls of early diagnosis? Used for neovascularization. And it should be in the undilated slit lamp examination. Look for the iris as a pupil. And in the initial phases of neovascularization, it occurs mostly in the pupillary area and sometimes in the angle area. And management by more than one physician, because it needs a team approach, retina, for ophthalmic retina and the glaucoma. And if it's a systemic disease, the systemic doctors has to be there, the general physician. Clinical codes, the pre-rubeosis stage, sometimes we cannot find out. We miss it or we cannot get it. So it's come to the pre-glaucoma stage, where you can find the normal IOP and open angle. Then comes the open angle stage, where you get the florid neovascularization of the iris. There may be inflammations, and still the angle is open. And in the closed angle glaucoma stage, you can find the ectropy UV, and it's a totally closed angle like a zipper. It is totally closed. There should be some differential diagnosis, whatever the cause. In case of open angle stage, sometimes you may mimic the acute angle closure glaucoma with the uveitis or the Fuchs dystrophy also. In the angle closure, it can differ. You have to differentiate from the IC and maybe due to the trauma. Pre-glaucoma stage, the management, what Dr. Chakrabarty has already said, pan-retinal photoglacial and pan-retinal cryotherapy if the fundus is not so clear. And in the open angle stage, retinal ablation, medical management of glaucoma, we have to start. Anti-VEGF therapy may be the first line of treatment than retinal laser, and filtration surgery with anti-metabolic is a later stage if the IOP is not controlled. But in the case of closed angle glaucoma, that's the most toughest area. Retinal ablation, anti-glaucoma medication, it always does not work. Anti-VEGF therapy, it has to be intensified. Filtration surgery with metabolites we can try, but aqueous drainage implants works much better. Or if it doesn't help, we can go to cycloablative procedures. Medical management, what should be the early stage? It should be the IOP lowering agents, that's a beta blockers, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. But prostaglandin, there is a lots of pros and cons. It depends on the inflammations and others. And always avoid the myotics because it will increase the pain and congestion. Topical steroids is a must. It's a relief and for the inflammation. And topical atropine is a cycloplegic drug. And make sure trabeculectomy, make sure the primary disease is taken care of. Preoperative anti-VEGF to reduce the eye rubiosis. It can be given intracameral or intravitreal. Trabeculectomy, major cause of failure of trabeculectomy is excessive healing. How to avoid the scarring? Risk factor for scarring to be assessed. Neovascularization of the glaucoma, failed filter, planned anti-metabolic for the high-risk patient. We can find that congenital inflammation should be minimized to get a good result. To avoid scarring, pre-operative tricks is a good hemostasis, minimal diathermy, good wound closure, post-operative trick, minimize inflammation, use of topical steroid, and you should consider 5-fluorouracil injection or mitomycin C in some of the cases. Antimetabolites, antifibrotic agents are there, mitomycin C, 5-fluorouracil should be used with caution, and it should be wide area of operation application to get a better wound titration. Tight wound closure reduces the complication, and post-operative titration provides the controlled flow. Wound titration, what should be the wound modulation with success rate, antimetabolized or releasable sutures or laser suture lysis. Just is working. A short clip video of the releasable suture, how to from the cornea end, we come to the limbus, the 10 or nylon. We fix it and we give 3 knots. Look, 1, 2, 3, and just hold it, tight it. Okay. Now you see if I pull it when I want to release it, it opens it very easily. Just one more shot. 1, 2, 3, hold it, fix it, tight it. If you pull it, look, so easily it comes out. We don't have to be worried about. Now it's like a laser suture lysis. Let's see it works or not. Yeah, this is a area with Hodgkin lens. I put the laser. You can use the argon. You can use the YAG laser. Just push it. There should be some blood should not be there. And after the laser stitch is being done, just give small pressure above, and you will see the slowly the blade is forming. And this is called titration. You have to give the try for one or whatever you like. But first start with the one suture, see the pressure, how it lowers, then you can cut the other also. Laser suture lysis, the clinical pulse should be affected the window period. Cut the crucial suture at a time, always at a time. And beware of the hypotonic because after cutting the suture, we give pressure to the eye. If the pressure is too much, there will be a gush of aqueous in the blade area. And sometimes, as it is an open type of, comes the flap is open, there may be lots of hypotony and it will be very difficult to control it. Next comes the neovascular glaucoma, the aqueous drainage devices, largely done for cases where the trab is contraindicatory, where you find lots of rubiosis in spite of intravitreal, intracameral use of anti-VEGF. There will be florid rubiosis, anti-VEGF contraindicated in some of the cases, and there will be significant scarring from the previous vitreous surgery because after vitreous surgery, sometimes in cases of some cases we find lots of scarring, and if the conjunctiva is scarred, result is very bad. So in those cases, aqueous device works much better. Thank you. Has the other speakers come? Profullo Chandrima?
No, sir. I cannot see Prafulla Sharma ji. I cannot see Chandrima ji also.
So let's go for, I'll speak. Okay.
Yes, sure. You can also
Let,
have any kind of question answer discussion regarding the same session.
let me finish because two of us are there. Let the two other come, it will be much better to other discussion. Okay,
Okay.
let's give us something. We have time. Okay, ma'am. Sharon sharing the screen. This significance of glaucoma. Here you can see this is a florid type of neovascularization. In these cases, I don't know what Abhijit can say. Anti-VEGF will regress this or not, I don't know. But in these cases, we cannot go for the trabeculotomy, and for to lower the intraocular pressure, aqueous drainage device should be tried first. If it doesn't work, we can go for the cryoablation. The basic principles of the glaucoma drainage devices. The most basic principle is the ability to remove the aqueous out of the anterior chamber without causing hypotony. In all this is a refractory type of cases. And in all refractory types of cases, neovascular glaucoma is the number one. Second criteria is to maintain is a long-term lowering of the intraocular pressure in low teens. Because in low teens, we can keep the eye, the optic nerve can be retained. Glaucoma drainage devices implantation is usually reserved for the cases with refractory glaucoma, what I was telling, or those unlikely to respond successfully to the conventional filtration surgery. And in those cases, number one always comes the neovascular glaucoma and others are there. Just I want to share it. This is the case of pseudophakic patient. There is some neovascularization you can see. You can see the neovascularization there. In these cases, if I don't want to do a valve implant, first I want to regress the rubeosis to get a very good success. This one to highlight, this is a case I've got one. The patient came to us a mature cataract with the rubeosis iridis, but the rubeosis iridis was a thin one. So the plan was the patient has the clear vision. USG showed no detachment or traction, anything there. That's been something else has happened on the retina, most probably hemorrhage or CRB or something like that. Patient is a diabetic. So I took a chance as the case of the just PR is there. Sometimes it's coming to accurate, sometimes inaccurate. So I gave intracameral anti-VEGF eccentric to this patient and went on for the cataract surgery. Then after that, I put the patient to send the patient to retina surgeon. They saw it, there was CRVO long-standing, they did a pan photocoagulation and intravitreal injection of anti-VEGF. And after a long time, patient was not controlling still. Sometimes the neovascular was coming. So I planned for the glaucoma drainage device. I'm following this patient for the last 3 years. He still has some vision, at least for 1 meter, something like that. He's happy. So these activities you have to go for it, right? For the patient. Coming to the TVT study, it supports the expanding use of tube shunts beyond the surgical management of refractory glaucoma. The TVT study also demonstrated that low levels of IOP can be achieved with the tube shunts in this patient group, which challenges the conventional wisdom. According to the TVT study, the frequency of post-operative intervention was higher in the trap group. The tube group had a higher rate of choroidal hemorrhages, and also the tube group had the same rate of mortality disturbances in some cases where we have seen in KVR using the, before we are using the Burwell valve, although monitor was a big type of valve with that. But with the AMET valve, it is less, but it may happen. Normally, two types of devices we use in India, most probably, is AMET glaucoma valve and ADI, the Indian name. In the Ahmed glaucoma, it has low risk of immediate hypotonic because it is a valve. But it has a hypertensive phase about 2 weeks to 1 month when you have to give lots of Diamos tablet to lower the intraocular pressure and requires more anti-glaucoma medicine on long-term treatment. In case of ADI, there is a high risk of hypotonic if it is unligated because it is not a valve, it is a one-way traffic. So you have to ligate, keep it for at least 1 month to make a pool where the aqueous will be drained at the later part and the posterior part between two muscles where the body of the valve is there. Then slowly we have to cut the suture, you'll get a good valve action. So ligated type, IOP is still high IOP till the suture dehiscence is occur. We have to ligate because we use the aid of Vicryl in those types of cases, and that's because the Vicryl is a graded one, it loses its stitch. So there's a loose stitch and the aqueous works. Advances in therapy, glaucoma drainage devices has been designed for bypassing the congenital scarring at the level of the limbus. Ahmed glaucoma has a high efficacy and a safety profile when compared with the other traditional filtering procedures. Ahmed glaucoma valve implantation can be recommended as a primary surgery in particular types of glaucoma phenotypes. I have no financial interest. And this is Abdul Mateen, who he's the person who made the Ahmed glaucoma glass, the FP7 and FP8 model is for the adult, this for the pediatrics group. And this how is the valve works. It is a valve where there's a silicon membrane which opens up when the intraocular pressure is high, and again close when the intraocular pressure is low. So this is the two videos I will show you. Number one video is a Ahmed glaucoma valve is being used. Is a pseudophakic glaucoma. We had high intraocular pressure with the neovascularization. Anti-VEGF was given, neovascular reduced. There's a plan for surgery was done to go directly for the Ahmed glaucoma valve. First, we do the priming of the valve to see the potential of the valve. Next, just put the valve. It should be about 8 millimeter from the limbus. It should be fixed with the nylon, ideally. And there's a hole in the valve where it is fixed with the sclera. The two holes are there. By the 2 points, we can squeeze the hole away. Otherwise, it will slowly go backward and it will be lost in the posteriorly, the orbit. So you have to fix the valve. Same thing happens with the other side. There's a hole. This is a very critical part. I'm not a retina surgeon because they do very intrascleral suture. We are very scared because there may be puncture. We have to be very careful. After that, you have to bevel it up at least 2 to 3 millimeter with a 23 gauge needle. Go direct over the iris towards the anterior chamber. We put some viscoelastic to deepen the anterior chamber, and slowly the valve tube is being placed inside. And you have to fix the tube because there is a chance the tube may go backward and there won't be any aqueous drainage from the anterior chamber. So I fix the tube with that same nylon, with the Dyno or Teno, whatever is available, but it should not be too tight. Then from cadaveric sclera, the patch graft with the sclera is given about 4 to 5 millimeter. The stitch towards the sclera. I'll take a little more time. There lots of time is there. The sclera has been fixed. And you got to separately, we have to stitch both tenons in the interrupted suture and the conjunctival and continuous suture. Sometimes the anterior chamber, we have to get a viscolarity to form the anterior chamber. So that slowly it comes. This is a case why I want to discuss. There's a case of retinal detachment operation done years back. And after that, with the plumb, the girdle plumb was given as a 360 plumb, and the eye was something that's a pear-shaped eye. The patient said he was 2 to 3 millimeter mercury diopter before the operation. After that, the diopter changed to -10. So I thought that's an axial length has increased because of the tightening of the plumb. But somehow or other, there was intraocular pressure rise, secondary glaucoma with neovascularization. So I consulted the retina surgeon. They said you can remove the plumb, but I don't think the trap will work. You can go for the valve. I did go for the valve. And also the retina surgeon couldn't find anything in the retina back. I don't know if just because of the high intraocular pressure, there was rebosis. So this is the operation. First, I tried to remove the plumb. In this case of plumb, we don't know where the stitches are given or where it is fixed to the sclera. Ideally, it should be done by the retina surgeons to remove the plumb. But somehow I got some stitch here, the fixing stitch. I removed it. Now look at the plumb. I don't know the other stitches has been were there or just is that dissolved, I don't know. One stitch came out. Now the plumb is coming out. It's not the ideal way to pull it, but somehow I was lucky, nothing happened. It came out smoothly. Now these types of plumb are very rarely used after the cause of vitrectomy. And this same area, I put the valve. The lots of scarring is there because I said before, after any retina surgery, there is scarring. Fixing the plate of the valve with a nylon suture. The normal procedure as for the before, 23 gauge needle, just open the antechamber. The tube is inserted inside. The patch graft. And it's a suture. You can see the tube inside, but it will regress a little when the chamber forms and the intraocular pressure will rise.
Retina
now
was attached?
yeah.
Retina was attached in this case?
Yeah, retina was attached. Nothing was happening with retina. Retina was flat detachment. There was no detachment. Retina flat. It was good
And
reaction.
another question can I do?
Sure.
Can I ask that? In our institute, lots of people putting the tube in the posterior chamber after
Yes.
thoracovidectomy
The
and
vitrectomy.
means
Now
how
it's
it is
coming to that.
different?
No, it works much better if we go for the good vitrectomy in these types of cases.
No, but
Because
if you
in the
put it in anterior chamber and put you in the posterior chamber, does it make any difference with the device?
the problem is that in the anterior chamber, if you put, there may be the cornea touch, there may be the iris touch, and there, if there is a phakic patient, there may be the lenticular touch also, which may lead to complication. So if we can go for a very good posterior vitrectomy, where there is no vitreous tract and it's less inside the of the pars plana root, it works much better, no doubt.
Okay.
We do a lot of cases. Now coming to the Indian dye, that's the made in India. This is the person, George Puthran, who made the aqueous drainage device, same like that of the Burwell valve. So this is a Adi aqueous Arolab part. Orolab aqueous drainage implant is a non-resistant tube device based on the Burwell implant. It reduces the intraocular pressure by draining aqueous tube from the anterior chamber into the subconscious space. And this is the small video clip of the Adi. You can say this is quite a big one, and it's posted in. This is a ligation is a must because it's a non-valve one. So we can find also the Adi was there. Just I want to be, just want to tell, these two types of valves are all the Indian made. One is the Indian Auto Group, is a totally Indian, and also Dr. Martin, who is from India now, is a Indian American now, but he is an Indian Lucknow person. So these are post-operative cases of the neovascular glaucoma in one case. You see, there's a very good, there's no neovascularization after the good retinal surgeon worked on it, and the patient is doing fine. This is another one. And this is a case of typical case of what I was telling in the angle closer stage, where you get the ectropy and UV is all totally angle closed. After the valve, the eye is quite quiet. Now that the cataract is there, we have to remove it. And I think the patient will get a good vision. If I go for this one, this is another case where you see, but obviously what I was telling you, this is a cornea touch is there. You can see the cornea touch and lots of posterior signing
Yes.
here after the uveitis is there. So these things happens.
Dr. Chaudhary, I am very sorry to interrupt, but I can see that Dr. Chandrima has just recently joined us. So
Last
once
one.
you have concluded your presentation, we can go ahead with her talk.
Mine is finished. It's the last one.
No problem. Take your time, sir. I just wanted to inform you.
Okay, I finished.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
no problem, sir. Welcome, Dr. Chandrima.
Thank you very much. Should I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So is my screen visible?
Okay.
So should I go ahead?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes,
Proceed.
please.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Shumit Chaudhary, for giving me this opportunity of being a part of your prestigious instruction course. So I'll take everybody through neovascular glaucoma, coablative procedures, which and when. Cyclocoablative procedures, which and when. So that's neovascular glaucoma. On your left is rubeosis that you can see at the slit lamp, and on your right is the blood that you can see in the angle, rubeosis in the angle on gonioscopy. So treatment of the underlying process is very important. Panretinal photocoagulation at the slit lamp, endolaser, retinal coablation, transscleral retinal ablation, and diode transscleral cyclocoablation. So treatment of the raised intraocular pressure is done generally medically, that is aqueous suppressants, beta blockers, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, alpha agonists, avoid pilocarpine, and prostaglandin analogs. Topical atropine 1% is required, and topical steroids. So treatment of raised intraocular pressure could be surgical, it could be a trabeculectomy with antimetabolites, or aqueous shunt devices, or cyclodestruction. My topic today actually concentrates on cyclodestruction. So we have the cyclocryotherapy and you have the TSCPC, other contact and non-contact transscleral cyclodestructive procedures, or the endoscopic cytophotocoagulation. So high rate of failure in all the methods. Cyclodestruction is actually associated with incidence of hypotony, phthisis, postoperative pain, intraocular hemorrhage, and loss of best-corrected visual acuity. Adjuvant treatments are anti-VEGF, all the anti-VEGFs that are available, and the intravitreal triamcinolone provide a window for definitive treatment and make surgery easier, not sufficient alone for management of this condition. So if we move on to this, cyclophotocoagulation is divided into transscleral cytophotocoagulation and endocytophotocoagulation. So cytophotocoagulation reduces the aqueous production by destruction of the ciliary epithelium. The techniques are transscleral, transpupillary, and endolaser. Indications are failure of multiple filtering surgeries, primary procedure to elevate pain in neovascular glaucoma with poor visual potential, painful blind eye, surgery not appropriate. So diode laser transscleral cytophotocoagulation method of ciliary ablation with success rates of 40 to 80% performed with the 810 nm diode laser, 1500 to 2500 watt for 1.5 to 3 seconds, and a total of 18 to 24 spots. Endoscopic laser photocoagulation performed with, again, the same diode laser, and xenon light source provides illumination, and the helium neon laser aiming beam, starting settings at 0.25 watt with continuous exposure time. The actual time of exposure is based on visual effect of the ciliary processes shrinking, and you can see the whitening. Typically, as much of the ciliary process is treated as possible, as there is a significant portion posteriorly that is actually not treated. So cycloplegics are not necessary, and steroids are used in the usual post-operative dosing. So laser treatment, cyclodestructive procedures, we have the continuous wave cyclophotocoagulation, that's the ab externo and the ab interno, and we have the micropulse cytophotocoagulation. So ab externo cytophotocoagulation, destruction of the ciliary body to reduce aqueous humor secretion, as I told you, and lower intraocular pressure. Anesthesia is needed as the procedure is painful. And laser treatment with endocyclophotocoagulation, that's the ECP, that's how it's done, that you can see those ciliary processes getting white as you proceed with the procedure. And ab interno cytophotocoagulation, that's endocytophotocoagulation for mild to moderate glaucoma, done with cataract surgery, relatively low risk glaucoma treatment, and it's not done in uveitis. So the endocytophotocoagulation is a cyclodestructive procedure, and it functions to minimize the disadvantages of more traditional cyclodestructive procedures, delivers laser energy to the ciliary body, ablating the ciliary body epithelium to decrease aqueous formation and thereby lower the intraocular pressure. So the micropulse cytophotocoagulation, that is what has popularized in the recent days, and it's a gentler form of cytophotocoagulation, appears to work very much like the drop pilocarpine. It has a mechanical effect, no restrictions on one's activities, and it's a low risk profile. That is how it is done. You actually go from in a semicircle on the hemispheres, and that is actually pulse cytophotocoagulation uses a low application of laser energy that is chopped into micropulses, and there's a gap between each micropulse that you give. It does not burn or destroy the eye tissue, and that's 33% of IOP reduction at 18 months has been achieved in this study, and 61% were off medication or reduced medication. So at a glance, micropulse transscleral cytophotocoagulation has proven to be safe, effective, and reliable approach for lowering intraocular pressure. Unlike other interventions, it delivers energy in a 31.3% duty cycle, allowing tissue to cool between each application. So there is minimal impact on target tissue and a reduced risk of injury to adjacent tissue, ocular tissue. And it can be used early in the disease course and requires minimal medication, reducing the reliance on anti-inflammatory drops and post-procedure. It can also be used on a wide range of glaucoma severity cases, those who are most advanced cases of the disease progression. Next, we move on to ultrasound cycloplasty. It's a novel device employing high intensity focused ultrasound for the coagulation of ciliary body with the aim of achieving selective coagulation of the ciliary body while sparing the adjacent structures. The high intensity focused ultrasound is a non-invasive procedure that delivers highly concentrated sound waves to the ciliary body, reducing aqueous humor production and increasing the outflow, thereby lowering intraocular pressure. So UCP brings about a reduction in intraocular pressure via multiple mechanisms of action that result in decrease in aqueous humor production by selective destruction of the ciliary body, increase in aqueous humor evacuation, and by inducing the stimulation of the suprachoroidal and transscleral portions of the uveoscleral path flow. So this is the procedure that I did, and so that's the machine that is used, and I'm just starting all three videos at the same time so that you can have a look. Yeah, and that's the semicircular cup coupling fluid is put in that normal saline, and that's the instrument. You have to actually, there's a docking procedure, and this green line that you see is that the instrument is docked into the eye, and then you apply the ultrasound waves, and it's a problem in the video here. So once you've done it on one hemisphere, you turn it as I'm turning it, and then you can do it on the other hemisphere. And this is where you can actually see that the ultrasound wave has been applied on these quadrants. You can actually choose, and there is a gap of 20 seconds between each application. So that is where, this is where the ultrasound waves are being applied. And once that's the calibration. And once this is done, that those red spikes that you see as the ones where the ultrasound wave has been applied, and then this is over, it becomes red, and then there is again a gap of 20 seconds, and then it will again go on to the next quadrant. So we did a study on this and results of the therapeutic ultrasound for refractory glaucoma over 1 year. So 38 eyes were treated with a mean follow-up of 18 months, and the mean follow-up in intraocular pressure was 38.6%. Analysis of the three success criteria was success varied between 74 to 78% at the mean follow-up time. Complications occurred, mainly inflammation, conjunctival congestion, and pain in 8.4%, including phthisis bulbi in 0.4% and persistent hypotony in 1.1%. There was no mean loss of visual acuity. So it's quite a satisfactory procedure, but of course needs to be popularized, and we need more studies to come up to actually be sure that we can do it in eyes which are not with so much severe glaucoma. Therapeutic ultrasound appears to be safe and effective for the treatment of refractory glaucoma. So the difference with TSPC and the high index, what I showed you ultrasound, is that it's the energy is concentrated over a smaller area than over a larger area. So it is actually preferable to the transscleral photocoagulation. So comparison of the two, I found Yu et al. Both UCP and TSCP are safe and effective methods for the treatment of refractory glaucoma. Nevertheless, pain is less severe in UCP. And Graber et al. Said that the success rate of significantly higher for cyclodiode treatment as compared to the HIFU cyclodestruction when treating refractory glaucoma. However, significantly fewer complications were observed with the high-frequency ultrasound photocoagulation as compared to the cyclodiode. So based on cumulative evidence on the safety and efficacy of these techniques, the range of indications for cyclodestructive procedures may be expanding so that patients with less severe disease and overall better prognosis are treated with such modalities. The role of cyclodestruction in glaucoma management will most likely continue to evolve because of the introduction of novel technologies such as the endoscopic diode cytophotocoagulation and circular high-frequency cytophotocoagulation and micropulse transscleral diode cytophotocoagulation. Early evidence with these recent introduced technologies suggests they have a clinically acceptable efficacy and favorable safety profile. Confirmation of these promising data with larger studies with adequate follow-up is needed for these modalities are more widely adopted before they are more widely adopted in clinical practice. Thank you very much for your attention. How do I stop?
Thank you, Chandrima.
Thank you very much.
Because I cannot get hold of Prafullo. He's not taking my call.
Yes, actually, I tried calling Prafulla ma'am, but I think the phone is out of coverage. I
Yes,
can't
okay.
reach her.
Same thing's happening to me. Okay, we can discuss.
Yeah, we still have time. It ends at 2:55, so you can
Yeah,
continue.
to Chandrima, do you want, if we can give a choice of surgery and the cyclodestructive procedure with these types of advance, you got a very good result. Will you try for this cycloablation procedure before going for the surgery? It means a bad surgery in neovascular glaucoma or the valve surgery where there is some result variation is there.
So actually, even with the results, what I told you about our study, I think I would wait to try it in patients who have good visual acuity still, because we don't have large enough studies backing us to say that these procedures are acceptable for people with good vision. So I think I would wait, because accepted procedures like doing an Ahmed valve or a trabeculectomy basically are accepted procedures and have a lot of literature reviews. So basically, I think I would wait, but where not everything has failed, in those cases, I would definitely give a try with the.
It is not yet time tested.
Yes.
We need lots of time to get a more results and something like that. And
Yes.
also one more thing, the cost of this instruments this is a very high. So for affordability factor, it's a good instrument, not a way working very well. But
Yes.
the affordability factor, because the ultrasound with one ultrasound, how many cases you can do?
No, it's a disposable cup.
Yes, that's a disposable
cup.
cup.
Is disposable, and that costs actually anything between
That's the
15 to
thing.
20,000. Yes.
That's it. So if we can sterilize with the EDU and do it again, it will be much cheaper
Yes.
for us. That's
Yes.
another thing.
Yes.
And even for the micropulse, because within half an hour, something like that, we have to complete the procedure. So it takes up 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So we have to collect a group of patients and do it in a hurry, so that with one micropulse set, we can do lots of cases, so the cost can come down.
Yes.
These
yes.
are the problem of the disposable and the new instruments what are getting off.
Yes.
Abhijit, want to say anything?
No, about the surgeries and the traps, I don't have much comments. So you people are the best. But I think lots of NVG cases can be prevented on their track if we are slightly cruel in doing the lasers, because lots of times we have seen the lasers may be done 2, 3, 4 times, but may we do the laser posteriorly as anterior as possible, but extreme anterior periphery, maybe you have to do cryo also along with the laser. Means you have to do that. So that lots of times maybe we don't do, because we think that okay, enough laser is done, and then the anti-VEGF. how many times you will be giving. The patient may ask why it is coming back. And I have seen 2-3 times given and 3-4 times lasers done. And then the doctor and the patient both got frustrated basically. But if we can stop it when the angle is open, then I think it will be good for you people also. If you get the patient to do the surgery, then also chances are much more than the surgeries which you are showing, the closed or Dr. Chandrimani was showing with the cyclodestructive procedure. That is the ultimate stage 3 things.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
these cases, if we can go for the middle one, that's the open angle stage,
Yeah,
can get a good visual like to maintain the between, get a better result. But once the patient is the angle closer state
Yeah.
with lots of rubeosis, angle closer, the ectropion UV, the chance is getting this day by day.
True.
So the patient mostly come to us. I know same to you also. Is a after the open angle stage is over, coming to the angle closer stage.
even I
There's a
have done
really-
few of the 2 cases. I still remember NVG vitrectomy also, because there is some finger counting vision and it is so much hazy with the vitreous hemorrhage that you cannot do anything. So first anti-VEGF, then ARC, then also vitreous hemorrhage is not going, some TRD. So you operate and then it's stabilized basically somehow. And another thing I think after the surgery, whether the valve or the shunt surgery or the main trap, the chemical factors which are vascular endothelial growth factors and other chemical factors which are advocating the new vessels formation, which are helping, those may get some way to go out of the eye maybe. That's why lots of times new vessels stabilizes, means you stop giving anti-VEGF and it is after a certain time, after the trap, it eye becomes okay. What is your opinion? I have seen it clinically.
Yes, sometimes it occurs. And sometimes even it occurs that you will see the vessels are there, there's empty vessels.
Yeah.
So you can at least say that it was a vessel. Now it has regressed, it's not working, there's no blood inside. It's a totally tube type.
Actually, what I feel, I again go back to the fact that diabetics should all undergo gonioscopy, because one of the first signs of proliferative diabetic retinopathy, new vessels, is actually new vessels develop in the angle. So angle new vessels is one of the earliest signs, basically. So I again go back to the thing that gonioscopy should not be avoided in diabetics who are referred with.
It should be the, ideally, it should be undilated people. Look
Yes.
for the slit lamp and the gonioscope, then proceed for the dilatation for the retina. That should be the ideal.
Earliest sign of diabetic retinopathy actually can be seen in the gonioscopy.
But one thing is the indication neovascular glaucoma, if we can go for the 2 types of doctors we have. One is a private practitioner working single-handedly, another is a group practice or is the hospital. It is
Yeah.
preferably it works much better in the hospital because you need lots of continuous overlapping of opinions, overlapping of treatment,
Yeah.
and also the cost. Because these patients normally comes, they are not for the high category of patient, high income group. They come with a lower income or the middle group. After one time, what obviously was said, the patient is frustrated, the doctor is also frustrated.
Mm.
They say, okay, forget it. Something like that.
Okay.
Most of the time, visions are also not good. Final vision
Can
which you get.
I actually doing? I'll leave. Thank you very much, because I have another course to join. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Chandra.
There are only 10 participants, so the number is very less. Everyone is attached to some other halls or 1 or 2 halls, etc. And they have to run like so, even one hall to another. So if there is no questions, can we
Wrap up.
coordinator, please? Hall coordinator?
Hello.
No more questions are coming, and the one speaker is also absent. So can we stop or
Yes, sir. Sir, are you done with your discussion?
more or less?
We have time until 2:55.
But no more discussion there because we have shortage of participants.
Okay, okay, no problem, sir. We can end the session, and then 3 p.m. we have another session.
Another session.
Yes.
Chitralekha there is as I see
Yes,
that.
yes, exactly.
Again,
Yes.
the neovascular glaucoma.
Okay, no problem, sir. You can take a break in that case.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Abhijit.
Thank you, Sridhar.